Welcome to Corporate Villains, the dark side of business giants. These are some of the most evil company executives of all time. Driven by greed and a blatant disregard for human life, these individuals have left a trail of devastation that continues to impact our world today. From the products we use to the very air we breathe, their actions have poisoned our environment and compromised our health. In this series, we're counting down some of the top corporate villains, shining a light on their insidious practices and the devastating consequences they've wrought upon the world. Prepare to be shocked, angered, and motivated to demand better from the corporations that hold so much power over our lives. Unfortunately, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Here we delve into Teflon's toxic legacy, the Charles Holliday Jr. story. Charles Holliday Jr., the former CEO of DuPont, knew about the dangers of PFOA, the chemical used to make Teflon. He knew it was contaminating the water, the soil, the people, and he did nothing. For decades, DuPont pumped this toxic chemical into the environment, knowingly poisoning communities around its Parkersburg, West Virginia plant. They assured us Teflon was safe, but internal documents revealed a sinister truth. They were well aware of the health risks, including cancer and birth defects. This wasn't negligence, it was calculated cruelty. DuPont chose profits over people, prioritizing their bottom line over the well-being of families. They silenced whistleblowers, manipulated data, and engaged in a sophisticated campaign of deception to protect their billion-dollar industry. The impact of Holliday's inaction is immeasurable. Generations have been affected by PFOA contamination, their lives forever altered by preventable diseases. The story of DuPont serves as a chilling reminder of the devastating consequences of corporate greed and the urgent need for accountability. This brings us to the baby killer, Dr. Arthur Fuhrer, and Nestlé's infant formula scandal. Dr. Arthur Fuhrer, former head of Nestlé's infant nutrition program, spearheaded a campaign that aggressively marketed infant formula in developing countries. This wasn't about providing a safe alternative to breastfeeding, it was about exploiting vulnerable populations for profit. Nestlé's marketing tactics were predatory and deceptive. They dressed sales representatives as nurses, distributed misleading information about the benefits of formula, and undermined breastfeeding practices. This aggressive campaign led countless mothers to abandon breastfeeding, often with tragic results. Without access to clean water or proper sanitation, infants became sick and malnourished from formula prepared in unsanitary conditions. The consequences were devastating. Infant mortality rates soared, and generations of children suffered from preventable illnesses. Fuhrer and Nestlé knew the risks, but they pushed forward, prioritizing profit over the lives of innocent children. This was not a mistake. It was a calculated decision that prioritized corporate greed over basic human decency. Their actions serve as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked corporate power and the urgent need for ethical business practices. Richard Sackler. He's the former president and co-chairman of Purdue Pharma. Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin. You know, that little blue pill that unleashed a wave of addiction across America? The one that ripped families apart and left a trail of devastation in its wake. Richard Sackler was at the helm of it all. He pushed this highly addictive drug, knowing full well the risks. They misled doctors, downplayed the dangers, and prioritized profits over people's lives. They knew how addictive it was, and they did it anyway. Richard Sackler and his company fueled a crisis, and we're still grappling with the consequences. Thousands upon thousands of lives lost, families shattered, communities torn apart. The human cost is immeasurable, and for what? So they could line their pockets. It's a story of corporate greed, of putting profits before people, and the devastating consequences that come with it. It's a story that needs to be told, and it's a story that needs to be remembered. Warren Anderson, the former CEO of Union Carbide. In 1984, a gas leak at their pesticide plant in Bhopal, India, released a toxic cloud over the city. Thousands died in the immediate aftermath, and many more have suffered from long-term health problems. It was one of the worst industrial disasters in history. Anderson, he was indicted on charges of culpable homicide, but he never faced trial. He evaded justice. He became a fugitive, a symbol of corporate impunity. The Bhopal disaster is a stark reminder of the human cost of corporate negligence. It's a story about a company that prioritized profits over safety and the devastating consequences that followed. It's a story of lives lost, of families torn apart, of a community forever scarred. The people of Bhopal are still fighting for justice, still seeking accountability for the tragedy that unfolded that night. Their fight is a reminder that we can never forget the victims of corporate greed, and we must hold those responsible accountable. Louis H. Brown. Louis H. Brown, the former president of Johns Manville. His company was once the world's largest asbestos producer. Asbestos, a known carcinogen, was used in everything from insulation to roofing, and Johns Manville knew about its dangers for decades. They knew it was killing their workers, but they hid the truth, prioritizing profits over people's lives. They buried the evidence, silenced the whistleblowers, and denied any wrongdoing. Their actions had deadly consequences. Countless workers, their families, even people living near asbestos plants, were exposed to this deadly substance. The human cost is staggering. It's a story of a company that knew the risks, yet chose to ignore them. It's a story of deception, of negligence, and of the devastating consequences of corporate greed. The fight for justice for asbestos victims continues, a reminder that we must hold corporations accountable for their actions. John W. Hill, the founder of the public relations firm Hill and Knowlton, was the mastermind behind the tobacco industry's strategy to deceive the public about the dangers of smoking. Hill and Knowlton, on behalf of tobacco companies, created a facade of scientific uncertainty, funding research that downplayed the link between smoking and cancer. They employed tactics similar to those used by DuPont to defend PFOA. Both industries used their influence to manipulate scientific findings, casting doubt on legitimate research and promoting their own skewed narratives. These actions had devastating consequences, leading to countless preventable deaths and widespread addiction. The legacy of John W. Hill and the tobacco industry serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of corporate greed and the manipulation of information for profit. We've journeyed through some dark chapters in corporate history, uncovering stories of deceit, negligence, and the human cost of prioritizing profit over people. These stories are not just history, they're a call to action. By understanding the tactics used by these corporate villains, we can better equip ourselves to hold corporations accountable for their actions. Let's use our voices to demand transparency, ethical practices, and a future where corporate responsibility is not an option, but a requirement. Please like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into corporate accountability, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Together, we can make a difference.